Have you ever been like absolutely furious? You want to send that instant scathing
Oh,
email,
yeah.
but then this completely separate voice pops into your head, stops your fingers, and it's like, hold on, maybe draft 3 polite versions first.
Or something maybe even more common, you put your head on the pillow at night and you start replaying some comment you made hours ago.
Ugh, yes. That flush of guilt long after you even said the words.
Right. Well, that familiar kind of inescapable conflict, that feeling that we're always hosting this internal war committee,
Yeah.
that's not just, human nature being messy. According to Sigmund Freud, arguably the most influential figure in modern psychology, that's the actual structure of our mental life.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving deep into today. Freud's blueprint for the mind,
Yeah.
the structural model, the id, the ego, and the superego. These are just like abstract concepts. Think of them as 3 really powerful, distinct characters inside you, governing pretty much every choice you make.
Yeah, from the most basic impulse, like wanting that extra slice of cake,
Right.
to your highest moral goals. And, for anyone listening who's ever wondered why self-control feels so exhausting sometimes.
Which is everyone, probably.
Probably everyone, yeah. This framework is, well, it's foundational. It really goes beyond just simple ideas of good versus bad decisions.
How so?
It explores the energetic balance, or sometimes the lack of balance, that really defines our mental well-being. So this deep dive, our mission today, is to really understand the power dynamics inside this inner committee.
Okay, so to make these ideas really stick, let's use a metaphor. Imagine your mind, your psyche, is like a high-stakes boardroom meeting.
Yeah.
Constantly in session.
Okay, I like that.
Right. So first you've got the IDID. This is the totally pleasure-seeking, demanding shareholder. They burst in screaming, I want maximum profit right now. Forget ethics. Forget long-term consequences. Just give me what feels good immediately.
Okay, the I want it now guy. Got it.
Exactly. Then, standing over in the corner, you have the superego. This is like the super strict, moralistic, regulatory board, holding this incredibly detailed, basically impossible to meet rule book. And it's constantly judging everything the id shareholder demands, threatening massive fines, public shame,
Yeah.
for any tiny moral slip-ups.
You shouldn't voice the inner critic.
Precisely. And finally, caught right in the middle, you've got the ego. Think of the ego as the incredibly stressed,
Yeah.
probably underpaid, definitely overworked CEO.
Right. The one actually trying to run the company.
Yeah. And their impossible job is to somehow mediate between the id's wild, insatiable demands and the superego's rigid moral restrictions.
While also dealing with the real world outside the boardroom.
Exactly. Making sure the whole organization, which is, you, doesn't completely collapse or get thrown in jail by external reality.
Yeah.
So let's start unpacking this pretty chaotic internal landscape. And I think we have to start with the least reasonable member of the board.
Yeah, right. If the ego is the CEO, then the ED, or Das S, as Freud originally termed it, is like the raw power source. It's the engine room.
Yeah, the primal desire machine. It's the part of us that's entirely inherited. It's there right from birth, and it operates completely outside of logic or, what's actually real. We often use the analogy of a baby, right? A demanding, always hungry baby. And there's a reason for that. It only understands immediate need. It just screams, I want satisfaction, and I want it now.
And from a more academic angle, Freud saw the id as this reservoir for all our psychic energy. He called this energy libido.
Libido, okay.
And this isn't just about sex, though that's part of it. It includes all our fundamental biological drives, things like aggression, hunger, thirst, survival instincts. And crucially, the id is entirely unconscious.
So we can't directly, talk to it or reason with it?
No, we never have direct access to its workings. We just feel the results, that surge of energy, that tension, that powerful urge that seems to come out of nowhere.
Okay. And its main rule, its operating system?
That's the famous pleasure principle. It's very simple. Any tension, any discomfort, whether it's hunger, thirst, frustration, whatever, must be gotten rid of instantly.
No waiting.
Zero waiting, no planning, no thinking about consequences. If the id feels tension, that tension must disappear now.
It sounds completely impractical.
It is, and that's a key point. The id is fundamentally disconnected from the real world. It operates without logic, without patience, without any sense of objective reality. It doesn't know right from wrong, legal from illegal.
Healthy from unhealthy.
Exactly. It only registers one thing: satisfaction versus dissatisfaction. That's it.
And this total impatience, this now, now, now thing, that leads to how it actually tries to get what it wants, right? And Freud called it the primary process.
That's right, the primary process.
Right.
Since the id can't actually wait for you to go make a sandwich when you're hungry,
Right.
it tries to relieve the tension through fantasy, through wish fulfillment.
So it just imagines the sandwich.
Pretty much. If you're intensely hungry, the id kicks in the primary process and generates this vivid mental image of food, maybe the perfect pizza, steaming hot right there in your mind.
Okay.
And for the id, this wish fulfillment temporarily reduces the psychic tension because, in its illogical way, it equates the thought of satisfaction with actual satisfaction.
Wow. That's really primitive.
It is. It's the earliest form of mental activity, and it shows just how uninterested the id is in what's actually possible or practical in the real world.
Okay, but you can see immediately if the id actually ran the show.
Oh, disaster.
Complete chaos, right? If we all just lived by the pleasure principle and tried to satisfy every urge instantly through fantasy
Yeah.
or just grabbing things, society, our jobs, relationships, even just physical safety,
Yeah.
it would all collapse in minutes.
Absolutely. It really confirms that the id, while it provides all this vital energy, is basically an anarchist. It needs a jailer, or at least a manager.
Yeah, it needs constraints.
Yeah.
That raw energy has to be channeled somehow, or civilization just wouldn't work.
Precisely. And that necessary constraint, that counterforce, leads us directly to the next member of the committer, the opposing moral force in our personality.
Okay, so let's pivot. We've got the id's primal scream for now W. Let's talk about its total opposite, section 2, the superego. That's Über-Ich.
The over-I.
Right. If the id is that demanding shareholder, the superego is that punitive, morally absolute regulatory board we talked about.
And this part isn't there from birth, unlike the id.
No.
No, it develops gradually, usually starts forming around age 5 or so, and it forms as the child starts to internalize the moral rules, the ideals, the shoulds and should-nots from their environment.
So parents, teachers, society, culture, all that gets absorbed.
Exactly. They become like internal psychological laws. The superego is basically the internalization of all those oughts and must-nots. It runs strictly on the morality principle.
Okay, not pleasure, not reality, but morality.
Right. Its goal isn't satisfaction like the id or even practicality like the ego we'll get to. Its ultimate goal is perfection.
Perfection. That sounds tough.
It is. It relentlessly pushes the ego to act morally, to be good, even when that morality might conflict with survival needs or simple pleasure.
So where the id screams, I want, the superego commands. What?
It commands, you must do this to be a good person, or maybe more often, you must not do that, or you are worthless, shameful, bad. It acts as that internal judge, the critical parent inside your head, constantly evaluating everything you do, think, or even feel.
Wow. And it wields its power through feelings, right?
Like that guilt we mentioned earlier.
Precisely. That's why Freud actually divided the superego into 2 key parts, 2 components that explain why we can feel both terrible guilt and sometimes immense pride.
Okay, what are the 2 parts?
Well, first there's the conscience. Think of this as the punishing arm.
The stick.
The stick, exactly.
Yeah.
The conscience internalizes all the things we were told were bad, naughty, wrong. And when our ego contemplates or actually does something that goes against these internalized rules,
The conscience steps in and generates those really painful feelings. Guilt, shame, remorse, self-criticism. It's the mechanism designed to make you not do that again.
that's definitely the voice forcing you to lie awake regretting that comment you made hours ago. It just won't let you off the hook.
Absolutely. It wants you to suffer a bit for the perceived mistake. But then there's the other side, the ego ideal.
The carrot.
The carrot, exactly. This is the positive, aspirational part of the superego. It represents the ideal standards, the perfect version of ourselves we strive to be, the person our parents or society wanted us to become.
Okay.
So when our ego manages to meet these often very high standards, maybe you achieve a difficult goal, act really altruistically, resist a major temptation, the ego ideal rewards the personality with feelings of pride, self-worth, accomplishment, virtue, that warm glow of having done the right thing.
So the superego is like this complete internal system of reward and punishment based entirely on morality.
Yes, a self-contained system. And it can be quite tyrannical, demanding this kind of moral purity. And when its demands are impossible to meet, which, let's face it, they often are.
Right, nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect. That's when it can induce a lot of anxiety, self-doubt, and that paralyzing guilt.
This brings up a really important point, I think. The superego It sounds like it can be just as unrealistic as the id, just in the opposite direction.
Very much so. It's often incredibly rigid. It doesn't really negotiate with reality or circumstances. It just imposes the moral law as it learned it. An overly powerful, overly harsh superego can be a major factor in things like chronic anxiety, obsessive-compulsive tendencies, even depression, because the person feels like they're constantly failing to meet this impossible internal standard.
Okay, so the committee is looking even more impossible now.
Yeah.
You've got the id screaming for immediate selfish pleasure,
Mm.
and you've got the superego demanding flawless, selfless morality, often based on rules learned decades ago. The potential for conflict there is just massive.
Constant tension.
So who is the poor soul stuck in the middle? The exhausted, probably under-caffeinated intermediary who has to keep this whole volatile operation from blowing up.
Ah, now we get to the star of the show in many ways. The mediator, the negotiator, the most reality-oriented part of our personality. Section 3, the ego. Das Ich.
The I, the part we usually think of as me.
Exactly. The ego is often seen as the hero, or at least the protagonist, precisely because it is stuck between these two incredibly demanding masters, the id and the superego, and it has to deal with the outside world too.
And unlike the other two, it operates mostly in our conscious awareness, right?
Yeah.
And pre-conscious-like things we can easily remember.
Yes, largely conscious and preconscious, and unlike the id, which is pure chaos, and the superego, which is rigid morality, the ego is rational, realistic, and organized. Its operating system is the reality principle.
Okay, pleasure principle for the id, morality principle for the superego, reality principle for the ego. Makes sense.
Right. The ego understands that you can't always get what you want immediately. That immediate gratification might be impossible, or socially unacceptable, or just plain dangerous.
So it has to delay things.
It has to delay the id's demands for satisfaction until an appropriate time, method, and place can be found in the real world.
So its main job is reconciliation, negotiation.
Reconciliation is a great word for it. The ego has this incredibly complex triple job. Somehow serve the powerful demands of the id, appease the often harsh moral judgments of the superego, and navigate the constraints and opportunities of external reality. It's constantly trying to build a bridge between desire, morality, and possibility.
How does it actually do that? What tools does it use?
Well, to manage all this, the ego has to use logic, reason, planning, problem solving, all the higher mental functions. Freud called this the secondary process.
Okay, primary process for the id, fantasy, wish fulfillment, secondary process for the ego.
Exactly. And this is a critical difference. Where the id just hallucinates satisfaction, imagining the cake, the ego engages in reality, testing, and planning.
Let's unpack that secondary process a bit more, because it sounds like where, actual adult functioning happens.
It really is. The ego, using the secondary process, doesn't just wish for food. It develops a plan. Okay, I feel hungry. I'd signal. What resources do I have? Is there food here? No. Can I go to the store? Yes. Do I have money? Yes. What's the quickest way? What should I buy that fits my budget and health goals? Considering superego input, perhaps. Okay, let's go.
So it's logical, sequential, takes time, deals with the real world.
Precisely. The secondary process is the ego's ultimate toolkit for delaying gratification, adapting to reality, and finding realistic solutions.
Okay, let's bring back the cake analogy now, but focus on the ego as that traffic cop managing the flow.
Good idea.
So the AD is yelling, eat the whole cake, now, pleasure, green light, floor it.
Right. Then the superego slams on the brakes, red light. Stop! That's gluttonous, unhealthy. You must show perfect self-control. You'll be ashamed.
Okay, chaos at the intersection. Now the ego steps in using that secondary process, calculating everything.
Right. The ego assesses the situation. Okay. Acknowledge the strong drive from the id. Acknowledge the moral concern from the superego. Acknowledge the reality that eating the whole cake might make me sick and violate my diet.
So what's the solution?
The ego negotiates. Denying the cake entirely, superego's preference, might just make the craving stronger later, id rebounds. Reckless consumption, id's preference, has negative consequences, reality and superego. Therefore, the compromise is, we will eat one small reasonable slice now. We will fully savor it, satisfying the id somewhat. We will then put the rest away securely for a planned treat tomorrow, satisfying the superego's demand for moderation and control, and managing the real-world caloric intake.
That's actually quite sophisticated. The ego finding a compromise that addresses all three demands.
When it works well, yes. But what makes the ego's job so incredibly draining and difficult is the constant threat of anxiety.
Anxiety, where does that come in?
Anxiety. for Freud, is basically a danger signal. It arises when the ego feels like it's losing control, when it's struggling to harmonize the competing demands of the id, the superego, and external reality, when the pressure gets too high from any of those sources.
The ego feels overwhelmed.
Exactly. It feels overwhelmed, threatened, and anxiety is the alarm bell saying, warning, system overload imminent.
Okay, so when that alarm bell rings, what does the ego do? Does it just panic?
Well, it might feel panic, but it also has a special toolkit to manage that acute distress, to defend itself. These are the famous defense mechanisms.
Right, I've heard of those, like denial, projection.
Exactly. Defense mechanisms are essentially unconscious strategies the ego uses to distort reality, just temporarily, in order to reduce the perceived threat and lower the anxiety coming from the id's impulses or the superego's judgments.
Okay, let's maybe dig into a couple of those for this deep dive. How do they function as like negotiations or coping strategies for the ego?
Yeah.
Maybe. Repression and sublimation. Those sound important.
Excellent choices. Repression is probably the most fundamental defense mechanism. It's like the ego's ultimate emergency tactic for dealing with an overwhelming demand, a traumatic memory, or an unacceptable thought that creates too much anxiety.
So what is repression?
Repression is the ego's forceful, unconscious effort to just push threatening or unacceptable thoughts, memories, desires, or impulses completely out of conscious awareness. Shove them down into the unconscious.
So it's like consciously deciding to forget something.
No, that's the key. It's unconscious. The ego basically operates on the principle of, if I don't know about this overwhelming conflict or painful memory, it can't hurt me or cause anxiety.
You give an example.
Sure.
I
A
can-
classic example might be someone who experienced significant trauma in childhood. The memory of the trauma and the intense fear or shame associated with it might be actively repressed by the ego because acknowledging it would simply be too painful, too anxiety-provoking, and might shatter their current sense of self or safety.
So the memory's still there, just locked away.
Exactly. The person doesn't consciously forget in the normal sense, but the ego actively prevents the memory and associated feelings from reaching consciousness. It's a protective move in the short term.
Boy.
But it takes a lot of continuous psychic energy to keep that material repressed, like holding a beach ball underwater. That constant effort is often the hidden source of other psychological issues later on, unexplained anxiety, depression, physical symptoms. So even the ego's defenses have a cost.
Okay, that's repression.
Yep.
Powerful but costly. What about sublimation? You hear that one talked about as being more positive.
Yes, sublimation is often considered the healthiest, most mature defense mechanism. It's seen as a hallmark of a well-functioning, strong ego.
So what does it involve?
Sublimation is the process of channeling unacceptable id impulses, particularly the powerful drives of aggression and sexuality, into activities that are socially acceptable, valued, and even constructive.
So it's not just blocking the impulse, it's redirecting it.
Exactly. It's the ultimate realistic compromise. The ego finds a way to let the underlying energy of the id impulse be expressed, but in a transformed way that doesn't violate the superego's rules and actually benefits the individual and society.
Okay, examples. How would that work?
Well, think about aggressive energy from the id. Instead of leading to fights or destructive behavior, the ego might sublimate it into, say, becoming a highly competitive athlete, a driven surgeon, a sharp lawyer, or a successful business negotiator. The original aggressive energy is still there, driving the person, but it's channeled productively.
Right, and sexual energy.
Libidinal energy, if deemed unacceptable in its raw form by the superego or reality, could be sublimated into creative pursuits, painting, writing poetry, composing music, passionate scientific research. The intensity of the drive, the passion is still there, but it fuels something constructive.
What's really key about sublimation then?
What's crucial is that the original source of energy from the id actually finds an outlet and gets satisfied, at least partially, not just denied or pushed down like in repression. The ego successfully repurposes the id's raw fuel into something the superego might even reward with feelings of pride and accomplishment.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like the ego found a loophole that satisfies everyone.
In a way, yes, it's a sign of a strong, adaptive ego that can find these creative solutions. It really highlights that psychological health, in this Freudian view, isn't about getting rid of the id or silencing the superego. It's about developing an ego strong and clever enough to manage them effectively, using mature defenses like sublimation more often than costly ones like repression or denial.
Okay, this is fascinating. We've got the mechanics down now, the impulsive id, the moralistic superego, and the mediating ego with its reality, principle, and defense mechanisms. Let's move into section 4 and see how this whole internal war committee plays out in some more complex everyday situations.
Right.
Moving from the basic urges and mechanisms to real-world applications really brings the theory to life, doesn't it? Let's expand on those examples we touched on earlier, maybe add a bit more nuance to the ego's negotiation process.
Okay, let's take that first one. Getting up in the morning. Professional responsibility versus the desire to stay in bed.
The battle of the alarm clock.
Universal.
So the Eads voice, pure pleasure principle. Ugh, alarm, pain, warm bed, good. Sleep is essential, turn it off. 5 more hours, no, 6. The world can wait. Comfort now.
Zero consideration for anything else, just immediate physical comfort. Then the superego's voice kicks in, full morality principle. Get up! Now, laziness is weakness. Being late is irresponsible, a sign of poor character. You'll lose your job, bring shame. You deserve the negative consequences if you fail. It's already laying on the guilt.
Okay, intense pressure from both sides. Now, the ego's initial move, using the secondary process, it has to calculate the odds.
Right. The ego thinks, okay, Eid wants sleep. Superego threatens doom. Reality check. If I follow the Eid and sleep in, the superego's threats might actually come true. Boss will be angry, could get fired. External reality confirms this. But the Eid isn't entirely wrong. I am genuinely tired. Ignoring that completely might lead to burnout later. Need a compromise.
So what's the ego's complex resolution? How does it broker peace?
It involves planning and resource allocation. The ego might decide, okay, I'll grant the aid 10, maybe 15 more minutes of rest, a small concession. But to avoid the superego's wrath and the real-world consequences, I must compensate. Option A, skip making breakfast, grab something quick on the way. Option B, spend money I hadn't budgeted on a taxi instead of taking the bus. I'll choose option B today.
So it satisfies the Eid's need just a little, demonstrates responsibility to the superego and the external world by still getting there on time, mostly, and avoids the major guilt trip. But it costs something, money, in this case.
Exactly. The ego often has to make trade-offs, sacrificing one resource, like money or time later, to manage the immediate conflict between internal drives and external demands.
Okay, let's take the second example. Impulse spending versus saving. That urge for the shiny new thing versus long-term security.
Another classic modern dilemma.
The ideal's voice. Wow, look at that new phone watch car.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It'll make me feel powerful, successful, instantly happy. Everyone will admire it. Buy it. No. You deserve that dopamine hit. Pure, immediate gratification and status seeking.
Then the superego's voice, often channeling internalized parental messages about money. Stop, that's wasteful, frivolous. Immediate gratification is shallow. You must be frugal, save for the future, for emergencies, for retirement. Debt is irresponsible, shameful. Very conservative, often anxiety-driven.
Okay, another standoff. How does the ego negotiate this one? It seems more complex than just hitting snooze.
It often involves longer-term planning and, again, reality testing. The ego has to acknowledge the Id's desire for pleasure, status, or novelty, but also respect the superego's, often valid concerns, about security and responsibility.
So what might the resolution look like?
A strong ego might formulate a plan like this. Okay, I acknowledge the desire for this item, validating the Id. Buying it impulsively now would indeed jeopardize the savings goal and cause financial stress, validating superego reality. Therefore, I will not buy it today. However, I will create a specific savings plan. I'll research ways to get it cheaper, maybe a sale, maybe refurbished. I will allocate a certain amount each month towards it. If I meet the savings goal in, say, 6 months, then I can purchase it responsibly.
So it's deferring gratification using the reality principle. It gives the Id the promise of future satisfaction, which calms it down a bit.
Exactly.
While satisfying the superego's need for planning, control, and fiscal responsibility. That 6-month plan is the secondary process in action.
Precisely. It's a structured, logical bridge between the immediate desire and the long-term constraints and goals. A weaker ego might just give in to the added and buy it on credit, leading to later guilt and stress, or completely suppress the desire due to the superego, leading to feelings of deprivation or resentment.
Let's try one more, maybe something even bigger that resonates with high achievers. The conflict over making a major career change, maybe starting a risky venture.
Ooh, yes. That often involves a huge internal committee meeting.
So the idol's voice here might be focused on excitement, novelty, escape from boredom. This new startup idea career path is thrilling. So much potential for creativity, freedom, making a mark. Ditch the boring job. Jump in now. Think of the excitement. Consequences are for later.
Pure thrill-seeking, maybe ignoring the practicalities. Then the superego's voice, likely tapping into deep-seated beliefs about stability, duty, and avoiding failure. Absolutely not. Stay where you are. Risk is irresponsible. You have obligations, family, mortgage. What if you fail? You must maintain stability. Prove your worth through reliability, not reckless gambles. Change is dangerous.
Wow, talk about opposing forces. How does the ego's ultimate decision navigate that? It seems like the CEO really has to step up here.
Definitely. A healthy, strong ego has to do serious reality testing. It can't just leap blindly following the ide or stay paralyzed by fear, obeying the superego. It needs data, a plan.
So what might a strong ego's phased approach look like?
It might devise something like this. Okay, acknowledge the ide's valid need for growth, challenge, and meaning. Acknowledge the superego's valid concerns about security and responsibility. The compromise is staged. Step 1, I will not quit my stable job immediately. Superego appeased, reality respected. Step 2, I will dedicate evenings and weekends for the next year to developing this new venture, researching, building a prototype, testing the market, IDE's energy channeled constructively via sublimation. Step 3, I will simultaneously build up an emergency fund covering 6 months of living expenses, addressing superego's security fears, reality testing. Step 4, only if and when the venture shows concrete signs of viability based on real-world feedback and meets preset financial milestones, then I will transition out of the current job.
That is a masterclass in ego management. It uses the aide's energy productively, respects the superego's rules about responsibility and planning, and constantly checks against external reality.
Exactly. It perfectly illustrates why the strength and flexibility of the ego are so crucial for psychological adjustment and effective functioning. A weaker ego in that situation might just repress the desire for change entirely, leading to frustration and burnout.
Or impulsively quit without a safety net following the ide, which could lead to disaster.
Right. The strong ego negotiates the terms of engagement with reality, finding a path that honors, as much as possible, all parts of the self.
So when we boil it down, these three parts, id, ego, superego, they aren't like good or bad in themselves.
Not at all. They're necessary interacting forces. The id provides the raw, essential energy, the drive of life itself. Without it, we'd be passive, lifeless. The superego provides structure, limits, ideals, a moral compass, even if sometimes too rigid. Without it, society would be impossible. And the ego provides the intelligence, the adaptability, the reality testing needed to make sure both the id's drives and the superego's rules can coexist within the real world without destroying the individual.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, let's just quickly recap that core structure organizing our inner world. You've got the unconscious, pleasure-seeking id. It just wants.
Instantly.
Then you have the often harsh, moralizing superego. It's strictly judgment.
Based on internalized rules.
And right in the middle, you have the realistic, rational ego, whose never-ending job is to negotiate this incredibly difficult, often conflicting situation.
Right. And we really encourage you, the listener, to take this framework and apply it. Think about the next time you feel that internal friction. You're pulled in two directions, feeling conflicted about something.
Whether it's a small thing, like what to say in a conversation, or a big thing, like a purchase or a life decision.
Yeah, try to actually name the three voices that are likely at play in that moment.
Ask yourself, what is my I demanding right now? What's the raw, primal urge or desire underneath?
And then, what is my superego saying? What shoulds or must-nots is it bringing up? What is it accusing me of or demanding I achieve to feel good or worthy?
And crucially, how is my ego trying to handle this? What's its negotiation strategy? Is it using the reality principle? Is it planning via the secondary process? Is it finding a realistic compromise?
Or is it maybe resorting to those costly defense mechanisms? Is it denying the problem, repressing the feeling, projecting it onto someone else?
Because just understanding that dynamic, seeing the players on your internal stage, it's not just academic, right? It actually gives you more power to become a better CEO of your own mind.
Absolutely. And that really leads us to our final thought, the big takeaway here. Psychological health, or just living a reasonably well-adjusted life, isn't about crushing the ide's desires. You need that energy. And it's not about blindly obeying every command of the superego. You need flexibility.
So what is it about?
It's about diligently, consciously working to nurture a strong, flexible, and realistic ego. An ego that gets better and better at its job.
An ego that can take that powerful id energy, the aggression, the passion, the drive, and channel it into productive, creative, socially acceptable outlets. that sublimation process we talked about.
Exactly. So maybe be a little compassionate towards your own ego. Recognize it's doing an incredibly tough job managing this internal war committee 24/7. It's probably working harder than any CEO out there.
Yeah, give your internal CEO a little credit.
Help it become a better manager. You can do that by acknowledging all three forces within you, trying to understand where their demands come from, and consciously striving for that realistic, balanced middle ground whenever possible.
A fantastic framework to think with. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the architecture of the mind.
It was a pleasure. Until next time.
We'll see you next time.